Okay. Well, let's see what we can do with this. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Dennis Levin, and I'm retired pastor here at Queen Street United Methodist Church in downtown Kinston, North Carolina. Chapter 8, which is, I think, Chapter 8 is extremely relevant today. And we'll see what happens with Samuel and his rotten kids. Let's see if I can get this thing reoriented. Okay, that's not going well. Okay, we're going to see some maps today so you get an idea of where we're going and where we've been. So let's see. Let's reorient this. Well, anyway, we'll go here. All right. So anyway, I wanted to show you a little bit about the terrain, territory, and stuff that we're talking about. We are in the transition period. We are going from the time of the judges to the time of kings under Samuel. Samuel's not happy about it, and he's got some dire warnings. We're going to see the dynamics of all of this. There's an awful lot in here that is not just religious, it's also political. And we need to look at this because some of the things that they were debating back then are things that we're debating today. All right, so I've got to reconnect my Microsoft thing. Okay, got to get us back on board. There we go. We'll get it on in a minute. It is connecting. So here we go. And I want to see how this shows up. Okay, sorry about that. You know how technical things go. Here we are. That's not a bad look. Okay. Anyway, as we get into 1 Samuel, I wanted you to see a bit of the terrain. Now for my class, everything is mirrored back, but for you who are streaming, I've got it forward. So you can look at the map and see what this thing actually is. I don't know if I can expand this at all. Yes, I can. There you go. So how about that? What we're looking at is this is the territory of the Philistines over here. And we've got the Amalekites down near the Negev Desert. Let's see. Here's Hebron. Okay. This is... it says Israel here, so I'm trying to read backwards. But anyway, this is the territory that's mostly involved with with Samuel, with the kings, and Samuel. Of course, he goes to all the tribes, but you can see that Israel really is not that big. Here's Moab down here and Edom. You've got the west of the Jordan. Territories, I'm sorry, east of the Jordan territories over here. This is Gilead. So we've got a lot of territory here, but basically most of what the books of Samuel are about involve this area and the fighting that takes place in here, which gets pretty intense.
Where would current day Gaza be?
Gaza is right here. It's Philistine territory.
Okay. So I was thinking.
Yep. It's Philistine territory. I'll show you. Here we go. We've got a little bit over there. Okay, this is where Gaza is. So we're still dealing with Philistines today. Just want you to know. Okay, I'm going to come back and see if I can get smaller here. Yeah, that's more better. Okay. So anyway, what's going on is Israel is getting really frustrated with the chaos of the judges. And with the corruption and all the rest. And so they're demanding that they be able to transfer over to a monarchy, okay? I think it's very interesting that while they're looking to transfer into a monarchy, that there just doesn't seem any option other than you're either judges or you're a monarchy. Okay, there should have been like there's a hint of something in between, but it doesn't come to fruition until actually the first successful democratic republic, which is us. So far, that is the only successful republic per se. Okay. All right. So chapter 8. When Samuel became old, he made his sons judges over Israel. See, now this is nepotism. The judges aren't there because they've been elected. This is, you're going to be judged because your daddy was a judge, okay? And daddy might have gotten the judge thing right, but generally speaking, the further away you get from daddy, the worse the judge. The name of his firstborn son was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. It's odd that they had two judges in the same place. Yet his sons did not follow in his ways, but turned aside after gain. They took bribes and perverted justice. All right, now, on the one hand, it's legitimate for a judge to collect a fee for service. It is not legitimate for a judge to collect a fee for judgment. So there's a difference between payment for services and payment for a bribe. And these guys evidently were, okay, how do you want this thing to come out? Fork it over, you know? So that's what's going on. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "You are old." How nice. "And your sons do not follow in your ways." Also not nice. "Appoint for us then a king to govern us like other nations." So they're not looking to elect a king. They're looking to have a king appointed by a religious figure. And through the religious figure, the king will attain legitimacy. Okay? Now, you look at how coronations take place generally. And generally speaking, an archbishop of some sort is going to place the crown on the head of the monarch, showing that that monarch is legitimate because God has anointed them to be the monarch. All right? There were exceptions, like when Napoleon grabbed the crown away from the bishop and stuck it on his own head. You know how that turned out. Okay, so there. So Samuel reported, let's see.
When they said, "Give us a king."
Yeah, appoint for us a king to govern us like other nations. So now they're copying the pagans around them. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to govern us." Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, "Listen to the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them." God's understanding is that there is a king, and he's the king. But he's telling Samuel to listen to the voice of the people and appoint a king instead of me. Now, why would God allow them to have a king instead of God?
Well, God did. A king will rule day to day. God would not be a day-to-day ruler.
That's true.
I've read this several times, and I understand. Yeah, God says they're rejecting me.
Yeah.
But what they were doing was not working.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these judges were more tribal
Yes.
instead of national. It wasn't working. The judges were perverted, crooked, and it always, to me, it always. Well, why? You know, I don't understand why God was quite so harsh, because what they were doing was not working.
That's true. There's an agenda here. Understand that the tribes are under threat. And because they are under threat, their attempt to get out from the thumb of the Philippines, or Philistines, was to get somebody who could bring a unified command to their effort. So what they're looking for is, right now, you know, if we want to go to war, I got to convince all these judges or all these elders to throw in with me to go to war with the Philistines because they're threatening me, okay? And maybe the Philistines aren't threatening me. They're threatening you, but they're not threatening me. So, you know, I'm trading with the Philistines. Hey, you know. So who's going to bring them all together? So the thing that they're looking for is somebody who is going to be legitimately in charge of all the tribes and to create actually a nation, which they were not. All right, it's called Israel, but Israel is just a conglomeration. Okay, so they're looking for a nation so that they'll have more clout in fighting the Philistines. So Samuel reported all the words to the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, pay attention now, okay? These will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots to be his horsemen and to run before his chariots. He will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest, and to make his implements of war and the equipment of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. Universal employment by the government. Okay. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his courtiers. He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officers and couriers. He will take your male and female slaves and the best of your cattle, the donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. On that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, okay? But the Lord will not answer you on that day. All right. We have just gone through a bunch of no kings demonstrations. And I want you to know that all of those demonstrations that happened in the United States were successful. We do not have a king.
Hallelujah.
Okay. We do not have a king. Now, the no kings demonstrations in London were a lot less successful. Okay? Because they still have a king. Sort of. Anyway. I look disdainfully on monarchies. All right. Understand now that the idea of a king in Israel is substantially different from the concept of a king in Canaanite territories if you go back to Deuteronomy 17. Okay, Deuteronomy 17, starting at verse 14. This is how God wants a king to be. Okay, if you're going to replace me, this is the kind of king I want you to have. When you come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you and have taken possession of it and settled in it, and you say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me. They knew that back in Deuteronomy. How about that? Okay, you may indeed set a king whom the Lord your God will choose. God will choose them. One of your community may set as king over you. You are not permitted to put a foreigner over you who is not of your own community. Even so, he must not acquire many horses for himself, or return the people to Egypt in order to acquire more horses, since the Lord has said to you, you must never return that way again. And he must not acquire many wives for himself, or else his heart will turn away. Also, silver and gold he must not acquire in great quantity for himself. When he has taken the throne of his kingdom, he shall have a copy of this law written for him in the presence of the Levitical priest. It shall remain with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, diligently observing all the words of this law and these statutes, neither exalting himself above other members of the community, nor turning aside from the commandment either to the right or to the left, so that his descendants may reign long over the kingdom of Israel. So what does he want? He wants a king under the law. He wants a king who does not assume that he is innately superior to the people that he governs.
Which is what the people would want.
Yes. Didn't achieve that until the Magna Carta. None of the kings that I've seen in history paid any attention to Deuteronomy at all, the 17th chapter. No, they did not, and still don't.
But it begs the question is, that's what God said, and that's what you would think normal, common sense people would want. So why didn't God appoint them a king to follow these? I mean, he was in conversation with Samuel,
Okay,
and they're going to choose the king, so why didn't they choose that kind of king?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. They didn't choose that kind of king because Samuel didn't want a king. He wanted a king that would fail. So in order for him to appoint a king, he just told the people all the bad things that were going to happen as a result of the king, and he did not go back to Deuteronomy and set the standards and the parameters for monarchy. Okay? God was looking for a constitutional monarch. That's what God wanted, a constitutional monarch. Someone who was not innately better than the people. Okay? Someone who would not use that position to acquire wealth for themselves. Who specifically do you think the Deuteronomist had in mind when he talked about what kind of a king there should be? You're not allowed to have a bunch of chariots. You're not supposed to acquire a bunch of silver and gold.
Jesus.
No. No.
Moses.
No.
Himself.
Okay. If this is the anti-king parameter, what king would you want to be anti? Okay. Give you a hint. Not supposed to acquire a lot of wives for yourself. You can't think of a king that acquired a lot of wives for himself?
Well, David.
Not David, Solomon. Solomon was all about chariots, and Solomon was all about wives, and all about acquiring gold and dealing with Egypt. Who knows how many people he sold into slavery to go to Egypt. He sold his people into slavery to go up to Lebanon to trade for the cedars of Lebanon. Okay? He had some tribes that he didn't like very much, and he assigned people from those tribes chattel labor for Syria and Lebanon, okay, in order for them to work up there in exchange for the cedars of Lebanon that he was going to use to build the temple. So he sent his people off to slavery in other countries, especially the tribes he didn't like. So what God is looking for is a constitutional monarch. And Samuel brings out none of those parameters, none of those safeguards. Samuel is putting in a king who has no safeguards. Okay? I mentioned Williamsburg a lot. We go up there and we see the royal crest for the king of England and of all the colonies. And it says on the crest in Latin, God is my right. God is my right. And he's got the different, Scotland, Ireland, and England, and all, he's got all of that on the crest. So God is my right says that God gives me the right, absolute right, total right to do anything I want. So the King of England, and this is one of the things that bothered us a bit, the King of England is not only the monarch, the King of England is also in charge of the military totally, okay? The King of England is also in charge of all commerce. The King of England is in charge of all the court system and the legislature. All of that came under the monarch, okay? So if you you had the House of Burgesses and the House of Lords, and in Williamsburg and in all the colonies. And the House of Lords was appointed by the king. The House of Burgesses were elected by the people. But if the House of Lords didn't like what you were signing as legislature, they could veto it. If you signed a bill and you wanted it to be the law, it had to go to the King of England for his signature before it could become a law. And there wasn't anything like, well, you could override the veto. There wasn't anything about if he doesn't sign it for so many days, it becomes a law automatically. It didn't have any of that stuff. If he didn't sign it, that's it. It's not a law. Okay? So the king had the legislature, the judiciary, his privy council sat in judgment of people in the high court, and the royal governor was the chief justice. Okay? And so, you know, everything came under the king. And what we did in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution, instead of saying that the king, by the right that God endowed him with, was the absolute ruler, we said that the people have all the rights that the king has. And it puts the people in charge of the legislature, the judiciary, you know, the operation of government, okay, the chief executive. All of these things, ultimately, the decision for all of these things comes back to the people, either in a direct election or through a representative democracy. Okay? And you have control over your representatives. Checks and balances, okay? But when it says in the Declaration of Independence that the people have the rights of the monarch, it says we have the rights of the monarch because of God. We are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights, okay? And because we are endowed by those rights, we are the king. Which means that you would hope you would have a responsible king because the king is accountable to God. In this country, it's not just that you have inalienable rights because of your creator, you also have a responsibility to that creator to be just in your judgments, to select good leadership, to have a country that respects the rights of the people in their religion, okay? You have that responsibility. It doesn't belong with even with the chief executive. Now, a lot of people say, well, you know, he thinks he's a king. Well, he doesn't think he's a king, because if he was a king, he wouldn't have to worry about a Supreme Court justice or some diddly district court judge interfering with his policies. He wouldn't, you know, all of these things come up for consideration. You may like it, you may not like whatever the president is doing at the time. I've you know, seen presidents I really didn't like what they were doing at the time. But the thing is, everything that the justice does, the justices do, everything that the legislature does, everything that the chief executive does, is up for consideration. Nobody has absolute power. And you know, if we don't like the rulings of the Supreme Court, the legislature can change the law. You know, the thing that is resilient about this country is that we have options. And if things start to go too far, you know, it might have started out with a good idea, and then somebody took it absolutely too far. And when it gets to that point, there is a wall for the pendulum to hit, and we'll start knocking it back. And the thing that makes this country great is not because we have great presidents or that we have great Supreme Courts or that we have a great legislature. The thing that makes this country exist and continue to exist is that we have the ability to change. Okay? Things can only get so far out of hand before we start taking it back. Okay? With a monarch, you don't have that option. And you might have a good monarch, but who knows what his kid is like, you know? It's going to be, it's all capricious. It's all capricious and absolute, and you gotta watch it. So anyway, God wrote into Deuteronomy the basics for the Magna Carta. And we took it from there. All right. Israel's request for a king is granted. But the people refused to listen to the voice of Samuel. They said, "No, we are determined to have a king over us so that we also may be like the other nations, and that our king may govern us and go out before us and fight our battles." You don't usually see the king out front, okay? You see the king way in the back, and the king's got his imperial guard around him, so that when it's time to beat feet off the field, he's got some rear guard protection, okay? The king is always looking for that rear guard protection. So it's kind of interesting. You see, I think it's really interesting. Watch what's going on in Iran right now, because there are a lot of people in Iran that, of course, want to dump the mullahs, okay? I mean, they're just something strange and bizarre about the mullahs over there. But they're looking for the crown prince to come back from, a lot of people are looking for the crown prince to come back. They've been chanting his name in the streets, and they want the crown prince to come back. But do they want him to come back as the Shah like his father, or who was, in many cases, deadly, horrible secret police and all of that stuff going on? Okay, the only redeeming characteristic he had was that he was our friend. But they want the son of the Shah to be the Shah, or do they want the son of the Shah just to transition them into a republic, or what's going on? But I think if the son of the Shah goes back, he's going to want to be the Shah. It's just me. I don't know what it is about that. Okay. There was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, son of Abiel, son of Zeror, son of Bechorat, son of Aphiah, a Benjaminite, a man of wealth. He had a son whose name was Saul, a handsome young man. There was not a man among the Israelites more handsome than he. He stood head and shoulders above everyone else. What are we looking at? We're looking at DEI, okay? We want this guy because of his immutable looks. Okay? He's tall, he's handsome, the girls all faint when he walks into the throne room. I mean, And so he's so cool. And everybody would love a tall, handsome king. Because if you're going to have a king, he might as well be a good looker. That's what I'm saying. Okay? So we revert right away to now the donkeys of Kish. Saul's father had strayed, so Kish sent his son Saul, "Take one of the young men with you, go and look for the donkeys." He passed through the hill country of Ephraim, etc., etc., etc. Okay, when they came to the land of Zuph, they couldn't find the donkeys. Saul said to the young man who was with him, "Let us turn back that my father will stop worrying about the donkeys and worry about us." Well, we hoped that he would have those priorities. But he said to him, "There is a man of God in this town. He is a man held in honor. Whatever he says always comes true. Let us go there now. Perhaps he will tell us about the journey on which we have set out." Then Saul replied to the young man, "But if we go, what can we bring the man? For the bread in our sacks is gone, and there is no present to bring to the man of God. What have we?" The young man answered Saul again, "Here I have with me a quarter shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God to tell us our way." Formerly in Israel, anyone who went to God would say, "Come, let us go to the seer." For the one who is now called a prophet was formerly called a seer. Okay, what does this mean? He's a fortune teller. He's getting paid to be a fortune teller. Okay? And he's got a pretty good percentage. So the people will pay him to read them his fortune, essentially. So I think it's kind of interesting. Now, what he's being informed by, ostensibly, is by God. So when he looks for an answer, and God will give him an answer. Sounds like a good business. Okay? Hardly any overhead at all. As they went up the hill to the town, they met some young women coming out to draw water, and said to them, "Is the seer here?" They answered, "Yes, he is just ahead of you. Hurry, he has just come now to the town, because the people have a sacrifice today at the shrine. As soon as you enter the town, you will meet him before he goes up to the shrine to eat. For the people will not eat until he comes, since he must bless the sacrifice. Otherwise, afterward, those who eat who are invited. After those eat who are invited. Now go up, for you will meet him immediately." So they went up to the town. As they were entering the town, they saw Samuel coming out toward them on his way to the shrine. Now the day before Saul came, the Lord revealed to Samuel, "Tomorrow about this time I will send to you a young man from the land of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him to be ruler over my people. He shall save my people from the hand of the Philistines, for I have seen the suffering of my people, because their outcry has come." When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord told him, "Here's the man of whom I spoke to you. He it is who shall rule over the people." Then Saul approached Samuel inside the gate and said, "Tell me, please, where is the house of the seer?" Samuel answered Saul, "I am the seer. Go up before me to the shrine, for today you shall eat with me, and in the morning I will let you go and will tell you all that is on your mind." Okay, got things going there. "As for your donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, give no further thought to them, for they have been found. And on whom is all Israel's desire fixed, if not on you and on all your ancestral house?" Saul answered, "I am only a Benjaminite, from the least of the tribes of Israel, and my family is the humblest of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin. Why have you spoken to me that way?" I'm sorry, his dad is Kish, and he's rich. So, anyway, we'll pick it up in 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to have a lunch here, which always interferes with my class. And I don't know why they do that to me. But in any event, it'll be a couple of weeks before we get back to this, and we'll see what this son of Kish gets to do. Okay? God bless you. Happy Easter.
Thank you, Dennis.